July 2020, Northern Arizona. The road seemed drawn with a ruler in the middle of nowhere, straight, shadeless, unforgiving. We left Page right after lunch because I'd convinced my friends, Nora and Vince, to drive US 89 to see the Ring of Fire near the Painted Desert. Undue, not total, Vince always corrected, and I, Maya, replied that if the sun turned into a donut, it would be worth the gas. Nora just wanted to escape our tiny apartment in Flagstaff and breathe dry air. It was the kind of trip that promises good photos and no unexpected incidents. Promises lie. My sedan's air conditioning started to sputter around Bitter Springs and died suddenly, spitting out a blast of hot air. We rolled down the windows and the wind carried the smell of dust and rubber. Vince pressed his forehead against the glass and said he felt like a window dog looking at bread. Nora laughed shortly, pushing her bangs away from her forehead with her fingers. "How many miles to the next exit?" I asked, more to push through the silence than out of necessity. 24, more or less, Nora said, checking her phone. The signal was flickering like a nervous heartbeat. "Then you can take a service road to a viewpoint the Forum recommended." "The Forum is a great source of trouble," Vince grumbled. I was about to retort when I saw it. A woman alone on the shoulder wearing a calf-length navy blue dress, holding an inverted reflective triangle, point down. She waved her open palm, a slow-down gesture. I swerved to the right and stopped a few meters ahead. "Are you going to stop because of this?" Nora raised an eyebrow. She might need help. The woman approached us with a calmness that belied the heat. Her hair was tied in a bun that the wind couldn't undo, her face as if she'd crossed too many deserts, her eyes the gray of the sky before the dust. She tapped lightly on my window. I lowered it. "Are you going to the viewpoint?" he asked in a smooth announcer's voice. "Try." She pointed with the triangle to a shimmering point on the horizon. "There's a detour the GPS doesn't show. Follow me." "Do you have a car?" Vince asked matter-of-factly. "No. No rush on the no. I'll guide you." And he raised the triangle like a living arrow. On her wrist I noticed a translucent plastic bracelet, hospital style with no writing. Nora gave me a light kick in the shin, the classic, "this smells bad" thing. But something in those eyes held me. It wasn't a request or a threat. It was inevitable. "If things go wrong, it's your fault," Nora murmured, closing the window next to her, as if glass were a wall. I turned on my turn signal and slowly pulled back into the lane. The woman was driving along the shoulder at the same speed as the car, her triangle marking time. Out of nowhere, a gap opened in the wire fence separating the highway from a dirt trail. No gate, no tire tracks, but there was a path, like a hot iron in the desert. I entered. On the first makeshift milepost made of raw wood, a word in white spray paint. "Vince." "No," said Nora. "That's a trick." Vince leaned across the benches. "My name is common." "Not really," I replied, keeping my mouth set. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman was disappearing and reappearing ahead, unhurried like a road marker. The triangle reflected a hue that stung the back of my eye. On the next post, V1Ns, with the number. Vince's sweat made a V on his shirt, a grim irony of the damp fabric. "Funny?" He forced bravado, but fear crept across his face. Nora opened the camera. "If it's crazy roadside art, at least it goes viral and pays the motel." 4 more stakes, each with a different way of mocking the name. Vince, Vin CE, Vi NCE, VCNE. And the dirt path widened into a circle of compacted gravel big enough for 4 cars. In the center, an objectless shadow. On the western edge, a parked car. It was my car. Not like mine. A peeled sticker on the bumper, a dent in the fender, the mechanic's greasy handprint on the hood. It was on its side, the front passenger door open, a strand of Nora's handkerchief caught in the latch. The trail we'd come on trembled behind us like a mirage. "How come there are 2? Vince said in a high-pitched, childish voice. "Can you hear that?" Nora whispered, covering her mouth. My laugh. On the radio. But our radio had been dead for weeks. Even so, a dry laugh, hers, emitted from the dashboard, followed by a slurring of words, as if wires were remembering. The woman appeared at the edge of the circle. She carefully closed the door of the twin car, placed her hand on the hood and snatched away some of the heat as if the triangle were absorbing heat. "I don't understand," I said, with 2 poor words against the impossible. "You arrived first," she replied. "And you arrived later." She looked out at the desert as if looking at an invisible road. "That's what happens when someone calls the wrong name." "What name?" Vince asked, and the name itself hung in the air. She pointed to the stakes. "That one. The first time came from across the wind." "What's the other side of the wind?" Nora pressed her fingers against her phone. "The shadow you leave behind when you pass too quickly. There comes a time when you and the trail believe you are one and the same. If someone calls loudly, the trail comes first." "Who called?" "I wanted to turn it into a common crime, with a perpetrator and motive." "You." Heavy silence. I was about to deny it, but Vince sighed. "I might have said my name out loud when I thought we'd missed the eclipse, like, 'Come on, Vince, don't miss the exit.' Nonsense." "Sometimes the sky answers," said the woman. Nora exploded. "Enough poetry. Who are you? Why this triangle? Why 2 cars?" "I'm the one who keeps you from leaving anyone behind," she said without posing. "The triangle is a reminder to those who think light is enough. And the cars, one is yours. The other one too." "Excellent," I said sarcastically. "That clears it up. Before you go, check the back seat." I turned reflexively. Vince was behind me, knees together, smelling of warm plastic and cheap deodorant. The woman added, "Not yours, the other one." Nora dug her fingernail into my arm. "No way." "If you don't open it," said the woman, "the trail will lead you, and he doesn't mind abandoning people." "What people?" Vince whispered. "You." I got out of the car in a sluggish rush. The other sedan seemed to have arrived on a trackless path. Its headlights were dull eyes. I touched the back door handle, as cold as a doctor's office. I opened it. No one on the bench. Just Nora's sweater, a half-full bottle that rolled and landed on my foot. Our map of Glen Canyon cut out incorrectly in the magazine rack. On the vinyl seat, letters marked by time and weight. Vin Key, a line, and the void. Someone who stayed and didn't. I closed the door. The dry sound cut through the circle. "Back to the car," the woman said, close enough that I could feel her shadow. "Hurry up, the sun doesn't like waiting." "What about the eclipse?" Vince clung to his initial promise. "You'll see what you need," she said. "But not here." "Why is his name on the plaques anyway?" Nora insisted. "Why not mine? Why not hers?" "Because he called out loud," the woman repeated, like ancient law. "Names are roads." I understood that arguing was also a path that trapped us. The triangle had stopped reflecting. Now it was a jagged shadow. We got in. I started the engine. The engine hesitated, then started like a spitting water. The woman pointed east. The trail lit up, not with a light but with a this-way look. I put it in gear and didn't check the mirror. "Don't look," she said, advice from the weary. "If you look, come back." "Go back where?" Nora was still pointing her phone at her lap. "There? For before. And before, now it's no use." The stakes that had spelled out Vince became lines that my mind translated on its own. "Keep going. Don't stop. Now. Almost." At the edge of the undulating ground, her silhouette appeared and disappeared as if we were film, and she were a projector. As the gravel gave way to asphalt, a shadow passed overhead. I looked up in time to see the sun biting into the wrong place. Too soon, or too late. It didn't form a ring, just a tongue of shadow that landed on the hood and vanished. "Does it?" Vince laughed, trying to control his shock. "If you want me to tell you," Nora replied, half distressed, half free. The woman was gone. Just US 89 again, straight ahead, trucks in the distance, the desert breathing. The dead radio crackled, and for a second the static sounded, "Thank you. Maybe I'll make it up. It doesn't change anything." We drove for 15 minutes without speaking. At the scenic overlook, I pulled over. The wind smelled of sage. Nora jumped and cursed softly, as if surprised by how beautiful she was. I followed. The observation deck was empty, fresh tire tracks on the ground. On a low wall, 3 plastic cups lined up, gifts that never materialized. In the sky, the sun was beginning to carve out the ring with the calm of a craftsman. Without our own glasses, we stared at the shadows on the ground, crescents dancing on the leaves of the trees, a trick to seeing without going blind. Nora used her cell phone as a makeshift filter. Vince leaned against my shoulder with the exact weight of a living friend. "What was that?" he asked, almost soundlessly. "So many things and nothing," I replied. "A woman on the road. Guardian angel of diversion?" Nora tried to joke. "Or the road itself looking back at us," Vince said, examining his hands as if searching for invisible ink. I laughed, with wry relief. The road in a blue dress and hospital bracelet. Forum poetry. "Did you notice the bracelet?" Nora looked at me in surprise. "What do you think it was? Someone who's been waiting for someone for too long, or someone who arrived first and couldn't leave." The ring formed. The temperature dropped a breath. The colors changed. Sounds retreated like animals under stone. Amid the silence, something clinked on the asphalt. A quarter. Alabama, on the back. I could have sworn it was the same one from the other car's seat. I picked it up. It was cold. A pickup truck drove by slowly. The driver raised his hand. A desert wave. The light in his rearview mirror split into three, as if reflecting three cars. I wanted to thank someone who wasn't there. We got back on the road. When the signal appeared, Nora tried to upload the videos. The files had strange names full of dashes like stakes. The app froze, and when she returned, only one frame remained, the triangle cutting through the sky. I wanted to complain, but I couldn't. Vince would sometimes say his own name quietly and stop, afraid of the answer. We stopped at a gas station in Cameron. The cashier had an old radio playing news that didn't match the clear sky. I bought water and some tired mint gum. I tried to pay with the coin. He pushed it back. "This one's coming back to look for you," he said, like someone returning a book forgotten in church. I put the quarter away. On the glass door, an old flyer. Woman missing in the 1980s. Last seen walking on US 89 blue dress. The photocopy was dark and grainy. I didn't recognize anything. I recognized everything. No one commented. We continued until the sun set and the road loosened. Near Flagstaff, the air conditioning came back on by itself, freezing cold as if it had never failed. We laughed out loud, the three of us, in a silly way that didn't suit the day. Above, the shapeless sensation that we'd traveled twice, the one the wheels made and the one Vince's name carved in the dust. That night, already home, I opened my wallet. The coin was there, cold, above my ID. On the back of the Alabama, a scratch ran across the initials USA, as thin as a fingernail clipping. It said nothing. It said everything. Sometimes I wake up wanting to test the broken radio, call out loud, "Maya, Nora, Vince," and see if the road responds. I don't. I learned from a woman on US 89 that names are roads, and that some lead to the same place twice. You don't always want to get there first. Good evening. My name is Ethan. I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And it was one November night in 2019 that I learned that arrows don't always point to safety. I left home on a Tuesday, almost dark, with the simple plan of hitting the road to Denver before dawn. I had an interview at 8, a motel room already paid for a quick shower, and the back seat of my 2007 Jeep Cherokee was crammed with models, tubes of drawings, and a portfolio held together with rubber bands. The recruiter, Lacey, had emphasized printed samples. I tossed a thermos of ginger tea, a pack of granola bars, and the silly certainty that driving at night calms the mind, because the highway lines seem like rulers for crooked thinking, onto the passenger seat. Until about 10 o'clock at night, the trip felt routine. An AM station broadcasting a football replay, wind turbines standing like sculptures, a fine snow drifting in and out of the headlights. I stopped at a gas station in O'Neill to fill up, buy pretzels, and stretch my back. The attendant, wearing a cap embroidered with a moose, commented that the winds were getting worse toward the southwest. I shrugged. The flakes on the windshield were still more decoration than problem. Back on the road, I let the GPS do the talking and practiced my interview responses. What project are you most proud of? How do you handle tight deadlines? The aquamarine dashboard gleamed, the wipers tapping like a metronome. About 40 minutes away, the snow thickened in a somewhat unruly way, pelting the windshield with icicles. I slowed from 65 to 55, then 50 miles. The road became 2 lanes with no median, and the reflective markers appeared lazily, as if they'd forgotten they existed for entire stretches. At 11:30 p.m., the GPS announced an alternative route, exit 79, detour due to construction. The blue map traced the curve with the conviction of someone who knows. I didn't remember any construction there, but this part of the country changes constantly, so I obeyed. I exited the interstate and entered a narrow state highway with no streetlights, just the white sliced by headlights. The first orange signs appeared. Bridge ahead, bridge closed, detour. The typography grated on my eye. A crooked R, misaligned spacing, too shiny paint. It was rushed. Midnight struck the dashboard as the road curved slightly to the right, and I finally found the work. 4 easels blocking the opposite lane, 2 crossing my direction, a box of lights forming a fluorescent arrow to the left, and about 10 meters away, a white box truck, Sans logo, taking up half the road with its hazard lights flashing. It all seemed plausible, until I got closer. I pulled over with my turn signal on. I opened the window with 2 fingers. The wind blew in, a sharp smell of damp iron, perhaps the breath of ice. "Everything okay in there?" I shouted toward the trunk. "Nothing." "Need help?" Silence. I got out of the car with my phone on flashlight and walked to the first jack stand. Up close, the trick was revealed. They weren't jack stands. They were hockey sticks, painted orange, stuck into the frozen ground with bent screws, held together by cheap slats. The flashing lights were bicycle lamps held together with cat clips. The paint looked fresh, shiny like enamel. Enough to fool from afar, perfect for pulling me there. I felt the back of my neck tingle childishly, as if someone had run their hand in the wrong direction. I returned to the Jeep, trying to appear normal. Steady steps, measured breathing. Locked the doors and reflexively turned off the headlights. Without light, the night swallowed me. All that remained was the dashboard, the sound of the ventilation, and the truck's turn signal, a strange heart beating outside my chest. That's when the darkness stirred. To the right of the trunk, a shadow shifted and froze. Another cut across the rear in a low feline run. The turn signal housing shook as if someone had touched it from the inside. No reflective vest, no radio hissing, no voice saying, "All safe." The arrow told me to take a narrow dirt road to the left, surrounded by thin trees. If I obeyed, I'd be stuck in a corridor with limited mobility. Brushing past the truck's trunk felt like asking someone to open a door in my face. My eye then caught a third exit that wasn't on any sign. The field to the right of the highway sloped gently down, a sparse pasture, and the fence at that point was down. If I slipped along that path, I could skirt around the truck from behind and get back on the road after the farce. I shifted into 4-wheel drive, left the headlights off, and slowly released the brake. The chains I'd installed on the rear wheels growled softly. The Jeep slid onto the shoulder, then onto the grass beneath the snow, a trackless world where everything is intuition. I heard something that might have been hay, a voice or the wind, I don't know. I maintained 10 mph, hands light on the wheel, trying to feel the terrain by the vibration that traveled up the steering column. Beside me, the trunk became a wall of shadow. 2 taillights flickered like nervous fireflies. Adults, not children. Everything in me urged me to look ahead and keep going. Behind the truck, the ground opened up enough for me to draw a half moon. The Jeep skidded once, twice. I corrected it with short taps on the accelerator, remembering the lesson I'd taken one winter just out of paranoia. The metallic noise grew louder in the trunk, door slamming, chains, and my body shrank on its own, as if I could become invisible by choice. When the dark strip of asphalt reappeared ahead, I climbed diagonally so as not to dig into the ground. Only then did I turn on the headlights. The whole world leaped into the cabin, the clearly human yellow line, the flakes streaking hyperbole, the black water of the road reflecting my own fear. I glanced in the rearview mirror. 3 figures stood where reflective tape had been. A 4th started to run and then gave up. No one waved, No one shouted. In seconds, they blurred into nothingness. I sped up. The GPS, lost, kept repeating, recalculating route, like a disgruntled child. It offered a return to the interstate shortly. I accepted, my entire body aching with tension. On the driveway, I caught a glimpse of a blacked-out county patrol car, half hidden in the embankment. I considered stopping, but it was as if I were still part of a strange choreography, and any off-script gesture could pull me back onto the stage. I kept going. I only stopped at a gas station a few miles later, where the world returned to familiar sounds. Pumps clicking, people laughing too loudly, the smell of strong coffee and reheated pizza. I washed my face until it burned. My hands trembled as if after a big presentation. The attendant, seeing my expression, offered me napkins and the sheriff's non-emergency number taped to the side of the register. I called. I recounted the details in a low voice. Hockey sticks, bicycle lights, a white truck with no logo, a fallen fence, a fluorescent arrow pointing down a dirt road. The woman on the other end listened as if she'd heard it all before, and only asked if I remembered the mile marker. I said no, but I described the curve, the ditch, the slope of the pasture. "We'll send someone to check," she said flatly, and I thanked her as if she'd saved me again. I stood with the phone pressed to my ear for a second after the call ended, waiting for another explanation to emerge. It didn't. I got back on the road as the sky lightened behind the darkness. The snow thinned to dust. The radio found a slow country song that spoke of lines in the road. Of course it did. Trucks cut through the air like ships, and there I was, a small car that had swerved around a poor but dangerous theater. I arrived in Denver around 6:30 a.m. At the cheap motel, the shower made the sound of a kettle. I reviewed the models, wanting to laugh at the bison sticker I'd hurriedly slapped on the rear window, as if a glued-on animal would protect me from real people. In the elevator, a man with a conference badge asked if I'd come from far away. From up north, I replied, and up north seemed like a generous term for everything I'd been through. The interview was the opposite of the night, predictable, with rules and regulations. I discussed schedules, compatibility, budget, learned the names of 2 directors, and was given a coffee that tasted like mud. I almost told Lacey about the road, but I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to become the guy who dramatizes a trip. I preferred to store my memories like we store a faulty model, hidden, but useful for remembering what not to repeat. In the weeks that followed, each orange sign seemed too new to me. Each arrow echoed that improvisation. I laughed at myself so as not to appear strange. Over time, the fear became a lesson. On an empty road, any object is architecture, and any architecture can be theater. Between a closed bridge and a closed bridge scene, sometimes there's only the width of a painted hockey stick. Months later, now hired, I had to visit a construction site in Greeley. The day was clear, the wind turbines spun elegantly. I kept my eye on the horizon, trying to find the turn. I couldn't. The fence was up, the pasture was just pasture, the road was just road. I pulled over to a safe shoulder, turned off the engine, and let the afternoon wind blow in. I thought about the gesture of turning off the headlights that night, the inverted trust. Asking the machine to trust me for a minute, crossing a patch of darkness without the luminous certainty it always offers. I got back on the road. A semi-truck roared past, its mirrors vibrating. The radio played a song I'd forget in 5 minutes. The highway opened up with its elegant boredom, and I finally accepted that some journeys aren't about arriving on time, but about circumventing what tries to impose itself as inevitable. If you ever see a lone fluorescent arrow on a light snowy night, remember, arrows can lie, sawhorses can be painted sticks, and there's always a field beside the road where you can draw your own curve. Sometimes survival is this: refusing the corridor they made for you, refusing the tin contact with the white truck, refusing curiosity about shadows that don't appear, moving forward until 3 figures in the rearview mirror shrink into cold, indistinct spots, absorbed by the ordinary world. This world so unglamorous and so precious that it keeps functioning while we drive. And when I think about that night, I don't remember the fear itself. I remember the precise sensation of the steering wheel asking for lightness, the rear end bitten by the chains, the measured roar of the engine saying, "Go." I remember how grateful I was that a fence was down. that a pasture had the right terrain, that I learned as a teenager how to correct a skid on ice in an empty parking lot. My name is Ethan Cole, I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and if someone asked me today what the most difficult project I've ever led was, I might answer, a midnight bypass, with no lights, no crew, and no audience. Because it was there, in the silence broken by bicycle lights and wind, that I understood that the road is also a place where we plan, choose lines, calculate radii, measure inclines, and that, with a little calm and a firm rejection of other people's scripts, you can get there, even when the official route tells you to go exactly where you shouldn't. I'm Miles, 31, and a product designer in Portland. I grew up in Spokane, learned to drive late, have a fear of hydroplaning, and an addiction to saving gas station maps. I've been dating Ava Lawrence for 4 years. She's a physical therapist, has a dead-on radar for risk, and thinks my worst flaw is eating at the wheel. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, a shelter in Reno posted a picture of a puppy. I clicked apply before finishing my cold coffee. The name came before the dog, Pepper. We left before sunrise, our trunk loaded with blankets, paper towels, a first aid kit, a collapsible container, and a rubber pepper-shaped toy. I-84 was clear. US 395 greeted us with pine trees lined up and a sky that seemed undecided between morning and a storm movie. The playlist my sister had put together started with Road Folk. Her note said, skip tracks 6 and 12 if Mom's coming. Mom didn't go, but we skipped them out of tradition. The trip was uneventful. A gravel stretch near Lakeview that slowed us to 25 an hour, bad coffee at a live bait station, and an empty high school baseball field with tired flags. In Reno, the shelter looked like a brightly lit school gymnasium. Pepper, big eyes, disproportionate paws, gnawed on my shoelace, licked Ava's thumb, and decided on the family. We signed papers, checked the microchip, took a picture in front of a mural of painted paws, and bought transition food. 5 minutes later, Pepper was asleep in Ava's lap, his nose tucked into her arm, breathing with that tiny sound of someone who doesn't yet know the world is huge. We wanted to track our mileage before nightfall, but the sky settled into a stubborn pewter gray. At Hallelujah Junction, we stopped for gas. The attendant, a lady in a Falcons cap, commented that the wind had taken an energy drink. We laughed. I adjusted Pepper's collar and closed the gas cap. When both car doors closed in sync, thump thump, our cell phones beeped simultaneously. Alert. Police activity in the area. Reduce speed and follow instructions. US 395, North Corridor. Ava raised the eyebrow that meant no heroics. I turned off the cruise control, dropping to 58, then 55. The wind pushed against the side like a stubborn hand. Fine sand pelted the bodywork like dry rain. Pepper opened one eye, sniffed the news, and went back to sleep. The GPS had disappeared. All that was left was a gray line snaking through the green void. Then cones appeared. First isolated, then a crooked row, funneling the road to the right. A portable sign flashed, crash ahead. Detour. 3 men in reflective vests twirled red light sticks as road guides. The rest was missing. No patrol cars, no flares, no construction signs with coats of arms. Where are the police? Ava asked, her tone clinical. I was about to guess. It must be just ahead, when a woman emerged from the ditch running against the wind, her short hair covered in dust, her jacket soaked. She knocked on the window with controlled force. I opened it a crack. Those cones are in the wrong place, he said breathlessly. There's no accident. They're pushing the cars onto a side road. I went. There's a pickup truck stuck in the way. They tell you to get out of the car. Who they? Ava. Those 3. They mounted the panel on a trailer, covered the license plate with tape. I tried 911, no signal. She held up her forearm. A paper map stuck to it by the rain, scribbled in pencil, with an X marking the area of the exit. Come in, I said, unlocking the back door before my fear could get the better of me. She dove into the back seat, smelling of wet earth and stale gasoline. Renee, from Susanville, he said, catching his breath. I work at a shop that rents kayaks and bikes. We closed early because of the wind. The dashboard light caught me. I looked again. Poorly spaced cones, the panel flashing at a slightly off rhythm. The guy with the baton swung his arm in an impatient semicircle, as if we were steering a Boeing. The wind whistled loudly. Pepper's ears pricked up. "Go through the gap on the left," Renee said softly, pointing to the double lane. "Don't brake. They won't get in front of you in this wind." I shifted down a gear, lined up the car, and swerved between the last cone and the yellow line. The traffic light wavered. No one was left a martyr. The pickup truck behind us followed suit. An SUV further back obeyed the detour and disappeared behind the hedge. My stomach made a rumbling sound that wasn't hunger. Cell phone signal returned, tentatively. Ava dialed 911 on speakerphone. US 395 North, past Hallelujah Junction. Cones with no vehicle, portable sign, 3 unmarked men. An SUV has just entered the detour. The attendant sounded calm. "There are no registered operations in this section. Stay on the main road. Unit en route approximately 10 minutes. Can you hold the line?" "We can. Ava." I began counting mile markers under my breath. 168, 169, 170. Focus mechanism. Renee, her fingers scratched, spoke like a weather report. Dashboard on a small trailer. Battery strapped down. The truck locks up from the front. The guy comes over with a clipboard saying, "Hold on a moment." I lift the lock with my elbow and jump into the ditch. The wind covers my steps. We climbed a hill. From there we saw another set of cones on the next curve. 3 or 4 cars obeyed, swerving behind a tall bush. Off to the side, a white light flashed twice and died, high beams to nowhere. Ava whispered, "That's not a service road." The blue lights appeared in the distance and grew brighter. A patrol car passed us. The trooper gestured, "Follow me, left." Another patrol car closed behind, calming the flow. Upon reaching the detour, the first one blared its siren twice. The men in vests froze. One tried to drag a cone, another reached into his pocket. The third took 2 steps toward the embankment. The spotlight swept across the portable panel. Under official light, it looked like an expensive toy in the wrong place. "Stay in the car," the attendant reinforced on speakerphone. We watched like someone staring into a fishbowl. Low-angle lights, open hands, curt commands. The trooper said something we couldn't hear, but our bodies understood. "Let go, hands, stay." The second trooper blocked the side entrance. The dashboard was disconnected from a makeshift battery. A tow truck was called. The radio blared, "Unit for the spur road." The wind swirled, as if signaling the incident. "They'll find the SUV," Renee said, holding the map so it wouldn't turn into a wing. Minutes later, we were escorted to a rest area. Concrete tables, alligator-lidded trash cans, a machine that flashed exact change only. Pepper climbed down, sniffed every table leg like a diplomat. My forearms were shaking, not cold, adrenaline working overtime. 2 troopers came to gather information. One had tanned skin with a wedding ring mark. The other had a trained, unblinking gaze. They noted names, direction, approximate time, the mile markers I'd recited, the absence of police cars near the cones. They confirmed. The SUV was stuck in a drainage hole. The occupants were unharmed and frightened. They said there had been scattered reports in recent weeks of misplaced cones between Susanville and Alturas, and that mobile panels sometimes disappeared from temporary construction sites. "The industry of improvisation," the veteran summarized. They offered bandages for Renee's bruises. She asked for water and, half laughing, "A phone that won't die after 3 pictures." Pepper rested his head on her knee, a natural diplomat, and she gave a tired smile. If I wasn't allergic to peppers, I'd steal that dog just for the name. We signed authorization to share the 911 recording and for subsequent contact. The tow truck passed by carrying the dashboard strapped down. A patrol car continued to collect evidence. Duct tape, unmarked vests, towing. The wind dropped a bit. The pine trees uncrossed their arms. Renee asked to get off at a road a few miles ahead. "I have someone waiting for me at the end of this road," she said with the confidence of someone who knows the map she's carrying. We offered to drive her to town. She refused, with stubborn cordiality. Before leaving, she peeled the map from her sleeve, smoothed it out, folded it neatly, and handed it to me. To remind you to look twice. And because this dog looks like he eats paper, I put it in the glove compartment. We returned to the highway through a stretch with a temporary 45 mph limit and now legitimate cones. Perfect alignment, vehicle visible. Ava put on an instrumental track. The wind, finally, sounded tamed. We arrived in Portland as the east began to lighten. Pepper inspected baseboards, tripped over her blanket and battled with the rubber pepper that didn't whistle. Ava went to the shower. I stood at the window watching the heavy river and the bridge awaken. When she returned, in a loose t-shirt and wet hair, she rested her head on my shoulder. "I still hear the wind," he said. "Me too. But now there's something good on top," I replied, pointing to the puppy trying to park on the blanket. We slept for an hour on the couch, the three of us. I woke to the phone vibrating. It was the highway patrol thanking me for the call, confirming statements, and saying they'd seized a box of body armor, duct tape, clipboards, and a trailer with the license plate area sanded off. The case would be passed to the sheriff. No headlines. Hopefully, with consequences. The next afternoon, I took Pepper to the park for his social debut. He greeted rocks, suspected a skateboard, and chose a branch as his best friend. I sat on a bench and opened Renee's map. The lines were light. The X's were deep as if border and trap weighed more heavily on my hand. I wrote in the corner, in fine pen, "Look twice." I folded and put it away. Sometimes life gives you arrow-like objects. The lesson is to remember they exist when the brain wants to obey automatically. 2 days later, a short email. A joint investigation with Public Works regarding the panel. I thought about the SUV and how easily shape deceives. A vest, a cone, a baton, and how the body obeys the appearance of procedure. It's not stupidity, it's a social reflex. Ava and I decided to develop a new reflex, double-checking before following a detour that appears out of nowhere. On Saturday, we met Renee for coffee in Susanville, her phone number revived, the meeting set. She arrived with discreet bandages and a gray coat. Her eyes measured the exit before the menu. "I went back there," he said after 2 sips. "With a friend. I found marks on the bank. They've been hauling heavy things through there for a while." Pause. "And I found some food packaging. Maybe for animals. Or for stories." "You were right to run," Ava said, "and right to stop us." "You were right to look twice," she replied, pointing to my pocket where the folded map was bulging. "Not everyone looks." We returned home as the world seemed normal again. At one point, we saw an official sign flashing bridge work, merge left with a patrol car alongside, impeccable cones, coats of arms on the clipboards, the same vocabulary of objects, a different syntax. I felt relieved to recognize the difference. At home, Ava labeled the glove compartment drawer, maps, documents, things that save. I laughed at the redundancy and enjoyed the ritual. I washed the car, sucked sand from the floorboards, and left a grain stuck in a corner as an honest reminder of Lakeview. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking I hear wind hitting metal. I open the window a finger, and all I hear are trees. I go back to bed. Ava asks in her sleep if everything's okay. I say yes, truth with an asterisk. We look twice, and it's become a habit. If someone ever opens our glove compartment for a napkin and finds a rectangle of paper with a pencil X and a rain stain, they'll ask, "What's this all about?" I'll tell it without any fuss. It began with a click at 2 in the morning, passed by cones that didn't belong, a sign that said lies in capital letters, 3 vests without coats of arms, and a wind that almost signed the trap. In the middle, we chose the gap over the theater. The provisional ending has Pepper snoring, Ava reading on the couch, and me putting the map away again, remembering every time an object